Welcome to 365 Christian Men, where every day we aim to inspire and encourage with real-life stories about men. June 23rd, Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao had a dream, and he wasn't afraid of the work it would take to achieve it. When he was little, Manny lived in a shack in the dense jungles of the Philippines. His father would climb 70 trees a day and gather coconuts to make sure his family had food, although there never seemed to be enough to feed the whole family. They usually couldn't afford rice, and Manny's ribs and shoulders were clearly visible under his skin. But Manny made up his mind to become a boxer, and when he was 12, he quit school and started training. At 15, to ease the burden on his mother, he stowed away on a boat to Manila and slept on the street, waiting for the sun to rise so he could train in the gym. Manny has won 12 major world titles, and his pay-per-view bouts have brought in over $1 billion in revenue. Today, he is a leading senator in his own country who is using his influence to help those in need. On this date, in 2001, Manny won the Bantamweight title.
Sometimes the best way to bring about peace is to pick a fight. It had already been a week and Manny Pacquiao's body was still sore. His joints felt stiffer than normal. These days, the swelling from his bouts in the ring seemed to be taking their toll longer. Overall, his body just hurt. Age was definitely playing a major role in his less than speedy recovery. He was back home in the Philippines trying to get a few days, maybe even weeks of rest before he picked up his training again. He mentally replayed the rounds from his last fight against Jeff Horn a week earlier, in which Manny had lost by a controversial decision. Those losses were always the hardest to accept. His body was basically screaming at him that it was time to hang up the gloves. But it had been making that claim for years, so he pushed the thought out of his mind. He had retired once. Not long after the biggest fight of his career and the century, if not of all time, his much-anticipated brawl against undefeated Floyd Mayweather, Manny walked away from boxing. He gave it up, but only for a little while. Deep down, Manny always knew he'd fight again. His motivation was just too great. As a matter of fact, that motivation had just showed up and was forming a line outside of his house that stretched several blocks. Manny, you see, is a Christ follower. He got to his feet while his aging body creaked and shuffled out in his sandals to meet the masses of children who lined the street. He handed out money to every kid in line. This line was very long, but Manny's pockets were very deep, and it took some time. But Manny made sure every child was taken care of. News reporters didn't document this charitable act. It wasn't a publicity stunt. The only certified proof of this great kindness came from random cell phones that waved in the crowd. This is why I fight. Those in need have always been his reason for fighting. Every income I receive in boxing, almost half of it goes to the less fortunate. Evidence. He's had 1,000 houses built in the Sarangani province, and he's given them away. No strings attached. Stepping in to help those in need motivates Manny to keep stepping into the ring. The motivation for his last fight was the same as the motivation for his first fight. When Manny was around 9 or 10, his brother was being bullied for being poorer than dirt. This didn't sit too well with the future Hall of Fame boxer. He found the boy who had been tormenting his brother and unleashed his first lightning-fast jab. It only took one punch from Manny to floor his brother's bully, and he's been fighting for those in need ever since. Psalm 82:3 says, "Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed." Who do you know who could use someone to fight for them? Sometimes the best way to bring about peace is to pick a fight.
Thank you for listening to today's story. Every day of the year, our hope is to inspire you with real-life stories of faithful men who have gone before us. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us, Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Join us tomorrow for another story at 365christianmen.com.